This is David. Welcome to the end of week one, coming to you today from our new place here in Dallas, Texas. As you can tell from the echo probably on the sound here, the room is empty, so I'm waiting on the truck to arrive so that we can unload, so that we can do all the hard work of moving in. So again, welcome to the Lesson 1 recap and the Lesson 2 preview. As I mentioned in my welcome video, I do one of these every week. And so what I try to do is recap the high points from the prior week and then preview the upcoming week's lesson to give you some tips on how to go forward with that. So again, I hope your first week was productive. I hope you got into understanding the ebook, and I sure enjoyed chatting with all the new students. It was great to be able to connect with you. And as always, I encourage you, if you have questions, make sure that you contact me, and we'll get together and answer those for you. So lesson 1 started off with a discussion, and the discussion was simply an introduction. And as I mentioned, those are very important. I use those, other students use those, and so I appreciate the depth and the conversations that you all had on the introductions. Discussion 2 talked about critical thinking versus static problem solving or traditional problem solving. And I enjoy the conversations on those. And one of the key things that I think you need to understand, critical thinking opens up an entire realm of things that perhaps you don't think about in traditional problem solving or when you use a problem solving model. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't use problem solving models. It just simply means that sometimes those models can put boundaries on your thinking. If you're using straight critical thinking on a lot of things, it opens up boundaries. So many innovative companies that are out there have to have, and they hire very intense critical thinkers, because critical thinkers challenge the status quo. They challenge biases. They challenge conventional wisdom. And those are things that I really liked when I was leading an organization. I like those people. Now, you can't have an entire organization of them, or you'll never get anything done, to be real honest with you. But it was always great to have those people who could come in and stare at something and go, perhaps, or what if? And that's really the mark of true critical thinking, particularly in today's environment and need for innovation. And so I'll be interested to see and comment on some of your discussion posts on that too, because again, critical thinking organizations are almost boundaryless, if you will, in their approach to problem solving and creativity. So that was discussion 2. Again, on discussion boards, make sure that you have one substantive initial post. I prefer those earlier in the week, so please don't do those late in the week. And 2 substantive response posts. And I make some comments on those. I make some comments on your research. I love discussion posts that have supported opinion, that have research attached to them. And again, you format those exactly like you would if you had a paper. You don't have to put, obviously, cover page and all that stuff on it. But make sure that you do cite your sources when you use an outside source to support your opinion in the discussion boards. All right, that was discussion 2. And then lesson 1, I hope you found helpful. And I hope you found it so helpful that you'll continue to use it. Perhaps if you're part of a sales team or a business team or a meeting team or a church group or whatever, that you will be encouraged to share that link with other people so that they can go in and find their critical thinking skill as well. And again, this case study was all about you. And make sure that you understand the components of these, because there are 7 different ones. You'll see those in the doc sharing as well, because you will be using this again as you go into the course project, because one of the elements of the course project will be for you to identify the critical thinking style of at least, I think, 5 or 6 of the key people in Amina's story. And so make sure that you do that. Also, make sure that you read a couple of chapters after Amina's story, because the book actually gives you the critical thinking styles of those people. So that was a tip. That was a hint. So make sure that you take a look at those, because, again, the message here going forward is that your critical thinking style and mine may be different, but it doesn't make one right and the other wrong. All it means is that you and I can work together utilizing our critical thinking skills in the elements of our strengths so that when we go forward, our chances of success as a group are enhanced. And so that's the important message coming out of lesson 1. All right? Now, lesson 2 starts the discussion. You may think the lesson 2 discussion board question is similar to the lesson 1 discussion board question, but it's not. It does, of course, talk about critical thinking, but it talks about the differences between critical thinking and strategic thinking. Now, for those of you who are in business, and for those of you who've ever been part of a strategic planning process, you may have some problems with this one. I've found that people who do not have business backgrounds do not have as many problems separating critical thinking and strategic thinking, because as a business executive in the past, for me, I would always default to thinking strategically. So I always had a process. I said we need to do X, Y, and Z from an evaluation perspective. Then we need to put together several different metrics, and then we need to execute those, and we need to measure our metrics and go forward. Well, what happens when you think too strategically and you do not think critically on things, you will miss out on opportunities. As I mentioned earlier, on the differences in innovation. I mean, some of the things that are very important are not handled through strategic thinking, but through critical thinking, and they must work together. So I'll be interested to see some of the things that you come up with in your research on those. Again, I encourage you to make sure that you get to the CSU online library, learn how to use it. As a matter of fact, in your course project, you are required to have a minimum of 9 peer-reviewed sources, and those will only come, for the most part, from the CSU online library. So make sure that you get used to doing that early in the class, and if you do that, the class will be much easier for you going forward. All right? Now, case study 1, and again, these need to be written in the form of a paper: cover page, introduction, body headings, conclusion, references. Case study number 1 is one where you take a look at it, and again, it's kind of a case study about you, so I don't mind if you write this one in first person. But it talks about the tendency that some people have to think unrealistically and the tendency that others have to think too narrowly. Now, if you begin to think about those two components for a second, neither one of them by themselves are very good, because you will be placed in a box, you'll be placed in a thinking box, if you will, that'll be hard to get out of. And so if you begin to think about that, and analyze it versus your own individual strengths, do you have a tendency to be that unrealistic thinker that just likes to throw things out and then see what happens with it? Or are you the person who thinks so narrowly that everything has to fit in a perfect little box to be able to move forward in order for you to be comfortable? Does that describe you? And then what are the challenges of those? What are the challenges of those in the organization? And then also, as a manager, how can you begin to work with those types of people so that you can merge those, so that you have some unrealistic thinkers, but you also have some narrower thinkers, so that the organization can innovate, but it can also make money and exist day to day until that innovation takes effect. And so I like that question because, again, it focuses so much on what I see in businesses today with unrealistic thinkers, or thinkers who think too narrowly. So that's case study number 1. Now, you'll also have to submit this week your outline for your course project. Now, hear me on this. Don't overthink this. It's simply an outline. There's no narrative that's here. Many of you, I've found in the past, have not done outlines. I'm a big outline fan. And outlines, just think of it this way. Think of an outline as the headings of your paper. So you'll have introduction, you'll have ominous story overview, and then you'll begin to talk about, in this example, the critical thinking. You'll probably define that. Then you'll talk about critical thinking styles for the main characters, and so on and so on and so on. And so, but what you'll do is just give me the headings on those. And if you have some subheadings that will support those, do that as well. Now, at the end of the week, I'm going to take a look at that, and then I'm going to post a sample course project outline. And again, you don't have to use mine, or you have to use one that I have. I think I actually give you one that a student did a couple of terms ago. And I'll just give you those after the fact so that you'll be able to take a look at those. We'll be able to discuss those. And again, this is part of the reason that I do the course projects the way that I do, so that before you start writing any narrative at all, you and I will have discussed your course project outline, the direction that you're going to be taking with your course project. I'll tell you the things that I liked. I'll tell you the things I think you missed. I'll tell you the things that perhaps would flow better if you put it earlier in the paper, and those types of things. So again, this is only worth, I think, 5% of your grade, but it's so foundational for you to understand, and for me to be able to communicate, that the rest of your paper, your course project paper, which will be 15% of your grade in part 2, which is due in lesson 4, and then 20% of your grade, which is due in part 7, or in lesson 7, which is part 3, that this is a real important part. So think of your course project outline as your roadmap. And if you have any questions about that, if you're scratching your head going, I just don't get it, make sure you contact me this week, and I will make sure that I go over that with you. All right? Well, I hope you had a great first week. As I mentioned, I'm always accessible, and if you need to chat with me, make sure that you do that. And I just encourage you to have a great week. And if anybody's in the Dallas area and wants to help move some stuff, give me a call. All right? Chat with you soon. Thanks.